Errol Spence has got the Manny Pacquiao fight.
Yo, everybody underestimated my boy Pacquiao. Boy, I don't know. I think I got Pacquiao. I think Pacquiao gonna be so light. Like, Errol Spence is flat-footed. That's his problem. It's my problem to me, that he's flat-footed. You can't be flat-footed with Pacquiao. He's gonna bunk all over the and be here, there. He's like a jumping bee. Yeah. And he let them do what they say. He be throwing them fast as hell. So like that's gonna have what's the name like off guard. Like I know he's a bad boy, but I don't know. I think I'm going with Pacquiao. I keep going against Spence and getting paid for it, like, but.
So you picked Danny over Spence?
Lil Bhop, he did say that he thinks Pacquiao is going to be all over the place because Errol Spence is flat-footed. That's the reason why he thinks Pacquiao going to beat Errol Spence. And Errol Spence had responded to that. He said in response to Lil Bhop, quote, he said Colbert and Chris Algieri was going to beat me too, laughing emoji. He fighting in Cali because he boring and they got to put his ass somewhere. End of the quote. So obviously Errol Spence is taking shots at Lil Bhop. I didn't know he had picked Colbert and Chris Algieri. I know he also picked Danny Garcia to beat Errol Spence. Now, it's one thing who's flat-footed. It's one thing to pick Danny Garcia because Danny's from Philly. I'm assuming Lil Bhop from Philly. So that's why he's going to pick Danny Garcia. But Chris Algieri? Come on, brother. You really gonna pick Chris Algieri when Errol Spence was walking through fighters? I mean, Colbert was more of a 50-50 fight, but even then, Errol Spence was the favorite because people knew how talented Errol Spence was. But that Chris Algieri one really put the icing on the cake. What's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, nah, I don't know. I mean, based off of what Little Bhop, right, has said recently, it's kind of hard to take him seriously, and that's kind of a shame too, considering how talented of a fighter he is. Granted, he hasn't really proven himself yet, just based just eye test wise. But to say that about Errol Spence, who's beaten Sean Porter, Danny Garcia, Kell Brook, Mikey Garcia, like there's one thing you can say: he's one talented ass fighter. Like, and even me, look. I have nothing but utmost respect for Manny Pacquiao, and I think Pacquiao's going to give Errol Spence some problems. But to say he's going to dance all over him, one thing that's consistent about Errol Spence is that he gets better as the fight persists. And at this point in Manny Pacquiao's career, I don't think he could do what he used to do anymore and have these like infinite combinations and have this quick footwork and not get tired like he used to. Because even in that Keith Thurman fight, Manny Pacquiao slowed down at the end. You saw that in the middle rounds where Keith Thurman started picking up the pace when Manny Pacquiao had to take his foot off the gas. You can't do that against an Errol Spence and win. You can't. Because as we saw in the Sean Porter fight, as we saw in the Kell Brook fight, it wasn't the beginning where Errol Spence dominated. It was the end. That's where Errol Spence's best performance shines, and that's where his dog comes out. And if Manny Pacquiao hopes to have a chance against Errol Spence, he has to stay consistent all 12 rounds. So counting out Errol Spence at all, with all his tools and just his overall mentality, I think that's a bad idea.
And let me say this, just to make it clear. As far as Lil Bhop, I'm a big fan of his. He's a switch hitter. He's like a mini version of Lil Boots, Jaron Ennis. He's really talented. Don't get me wrong. He's a really great fighter that has a lot of potential. But his comments is not making a whole lot of sense is all I'm saying. I'm not talking about what he could do in the ring. I'm just talking about the comments he had made just didn't add up to me. Like I said before, like to pick all these guys you just named, he picked Chris Algieri, Kell Brook, Danny Garcia, and Errol Spence beat every single one and beat every single one impressively. So by Errol Spence beating every single one impressively, doesn't that mean as a fan, if you doubted Errol Spence every single time, you will gain a lot of respect for him as a fighter? You probably start retracting your statements like, damn, yeah, I was wrong about Errol Spence, man, because he proved me wrong every single time, man. Every time I picked against him, I thought this fighter had his number. He always proved me wrong. But Lil Bhop, he's not doing that. Every time he picks against Errol Spence, he continues to pick against Errol without making a whole lot of sense is all I'm saying. Because I have heard Lil Bhop mention that if Danny Garcia let his hands go, Danny Garcia wasn't 100%, which
could have, would have, should have, crap.
I don't even know why people say Danny Garcia was on 100% when Errol was the one that was coming off a car accident where he survived in a miracle way. We didn't even know if Errol was going to be ever the same. We were praying that he will make it, let alone come back to the ring and perform the way he does. You know what I mean? So that's just another blessing. So to hear Lil Bhop or Danny Garcia mention that they weren't 100% is ridiculous, to say the least, because like I said before, it was Errol Spence that was coming off a car accident. But the main thing that I want to say is you will never, ever hear a Mexican say this about other Mexican fighters. You will never, ever hear a Mexican pick against other Mexican fighters, especially when they are the favorite, like Errol Spence says going against Pacquiao or Errol Spence going in against an Algieri. The only time you see people from their own race picking against their own people is Black Americans. We see it with the way they treat Deontay Wilder, and shockingly with the way they treat Errol Spence too, picking against them, because you will never ever see a Filipino pick against another Filipino. And that's a fact. I don't care what you say. You will never find Mexicans go against other Mexicans. You will never find Filipinos go against other Filipinos, especially when it doesn't make any kind of sense whatsoever. That's all I'm saying. We see even trainers criticize Shakur Stevenson, putting out false accusations such as Shakur is protected.
But I was surprised. I was like, protected? I'm like, how is he protected? He's look at the resume that he's had in only 16 fights. Is it the greatest resume of all time? No, but it's better than most of these guys who are quote unquote champions. Like, I keep telling people who say, oh, look at Shakur's resume and look at Valdez. I'm like, you're comparing a guy who's had 29 fights and is 30 years old to a kid who's had 16 fights and is 24 years old. Do you look at yourself? And he's about to accomplish the same thing. We praising Valdez for being a 2-division champion this year. Okay, kudos to him. Shakur is about to do the same exact thing in his next fight against Jamel Herring. And people are already making excuses. Oh, well, Jamel Herring isn't a Burchell. Okay. But you do know that the only reason why Shakur is even talking about Jamel Herring is because he knows that's the only way he'll get Valdez potentially in the ring.
And speaking of the trainer, is Buddy McGirt. Buddy McGirt said...
Buddy McGirt.
He said Shakur Stevenson is protected. And it's funny, how can the boogeyman be protected? Shakur is the most avoided. He's not the protected one. Oscar Valdez is being protected. All these other fighters are being protected from Shakur. Shakur is a free smoke fighter. ESPN and Top Rank revealed they got to go through a list to find an opponent for Shakur. I'm talking about the top 20 is out of the way. They got to go under the top 20 because the top 20 won't fight him. They got to get him out of the way. From the beginning of his career, it was Shakur Stevenson before all of the other competition who made the first step up against Diaz. It was Shakur Stevenson who fought Diaz when everyone was telling him it's too early. Shakur Stevenson, like you said, if you look at his record, he's on a fast track, if anything. He wanted to fight Oscar Valdez back at 126. Oscar Valdez said, I'm only fighting Frampton. If I can't get Frampton, I'm moving up. Shakur moved up, still can't get that fight. Herring want to fight Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez want to fight Herring, but nobody want to fight Shakur. However, Shakur want to fight everybody. He the boogeyman, but Buddy McGirt is going to say Shakur is being protected. At least if you're going to criticize someone, let it be fair criticism. Don't put false accusation out there in the universe that's not even true. The worst thing you could do is hate on your own people. And that's why I don't respect is when I hear a comment where it's not coming from a sincere place. Even Lil Bhop, he had mentioned that Errol Spence is going to lose to Algieri, according to Errol Spence, or Errol Spence is going to lose to Pacquiao. You will never, ever hear a Filipino pick against their own people, especially when their own fighter is favored to win. You will never hear a Mexican pick against their own countrymen, against their own people, especially when the Mexican is favored to win, like Errol Spence was favored to win against Algieri. It will never happen. So I don't understand it. I really don't understand it, and I don't understand where it's coming from. That's where I'm trying to get a second opinion.
Just in regards to Shakur, man, this kid gets like, I don't really know why people criticize him. I really don't. Because this kid is everything you want him to be. He wants all the smoke at this age. And he's calling out with it. Like, even when he was asked, do you want to fight Jamel Herring next? He straight up said no. And he gave his reasons. He said, because Jamel Herring is a guy who's already, like, has already been beaten before. He's already, like, a little out of his prime. He said, I'd rather fight Valdez because that's a much more competitive fight. And that's a fight that will push me to my best. And I'm like, and this kid's only 24 saying this stuff. This isn't what you hear from a guy who's being protected or being scared. You don't call out the best.
Yeah.
You call out fighters that we've never heard about. People say, oh, Shakur doesn't deserve a fight with Valdez. Okay, well, Valdez's next fight better be a champion or a top contender. It better not be a fighter I've never heard of, which I guarantee you it will be. It's going to be a voluntary defense against a fighter who's ranked lower than Shakur Stevenson. Because for those who aren't wondering, Shakur is ranked number 1, not just under the WBO, but under the WBC. So Shakur is technically the best fighter Valdez can fight who's not a champion. So there's no excuse why he shouldn't fight Shakur at this point.
And Shakur only want to fight.
You guys are going to make excuses.
Yeah, and Shakur only want to fight Herring, like he said, in order to give Oscar Valdez the reason to fight him, the reason he been asking for, get a belt. So he want to fight Herring in order to get the belt he's been looking for since he's been wanting to fight Herring, Oscar Valdez, that is. So once he get that belt, Oscar Valdez can't make no more excuses. So we shall see. But what I will say, they say Shakur was being too technical his last fight. Deontay Wilder looks too horrible with his technique, even though he gets knockout. Devin Haney, he got hurt, taking risks in order to give the fans the fight that they wanted to see. And even last Sunday, when David Morrell scored that knockout, now they want to critique him for the rabbit punching when it was his opponent that initiated the clinching, headbutting, and low blows. So he was retaliating to his opponent. And even after scoring a flawless victory in the first round, there's criticism. So like I said before, if you're on the coincidental list, you damn if you do, damn if you don't. You got the complexion for the neglection.
Hold it. You're not that pretty. I'm a bad man. Wait. I still got the wall. I got the wall. I bear witness, there's only one God, Allah, and Muhammad is his final messenger. That's what I said, Larry, on the Bungle fight. Thanking you.
They call me the problem, but you could call me the can man, because anybody can get it. Africans, Americans, Dominicans, Mexicans, anybody can get it.